Um, this meeting is being recorded. And I will turn it over to Nick, who is our Overdrive sales rep and trainer extraordinaire. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Tina. So yeah, I've been doing these for the last couple of years now. This kind of basic shopping and reporting training is intended to give you a kind of a broad overview of the most commonly used functions in Marketplace as it relates to reports that you might need to run, different ways to search in Marketplace, some of the kind of tools that we have to automate certain processes for you. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just using Tina's Libraries Advantage account as an example here, so you can see her information up here. Assume stuff here. So I wanted to kind of briefly go through the different lending models before we kind of go through different search techniques first. So you'll notice a lot of different options for certain titles when we're shopping in here. So if I just use this list as an example from the front page in Marketplace, I'll see some abbreviations as I'm shopping. One copy, one user is kind of our first and most traditional lending model. The name is exactly kind of what it sounds like. So this can be borrowed by one patron at a time. Otherwise, there will be a wait list on the title. This is also kind of called perpetual use by some libraries because that title will stay in your collection in perpetuity unless you weed it. So there's no kind of expiration date or anything on the access to this title. When you see metered access or MA, we have a couple of different types of metered access. This is a newer one that's primarily on audiobooks. You're essentially paying for 100 checkouts that can be used concurrently or simultaneously by patrons. So this won't ever have a wait list on it if you purchase one of these titles, because those checkouts can all be used at the same time. Kind of nice because you know exactly what you're paying per circ with that lending model. Go ahead.
That lending model is shared, right, Nick? So if you buy 100 checkouts, it's 100 checkouts system wide. It's not just 100 checkouts for your patrons.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
OCOU is also shared with the Advantage Plus guidelines that you guys are under. There's a lot of access concurring. So. Here. The lending models offered for a particular title is completely dependent on the publisher. So we do have quite a bit of traditional metered access content in Marketplace. The most common are going to be 12 or 24 month. It's essentially a lease. So these do behave just like an OCOU copy would. The difference is that the copy would actually expire after that time frame. So certain publishers will offer different choices for metered access. So, maybe if you're kind of on a budget and not, maybe you're not necessarily sure if this is going to continue to circulate a lot for 2 full years, maybe a year makes a little bit more sense. So depending on the publisher, you can see multiple different options for lending models. PRH offers both an OCOU for $95 typically for audiobooks, and then they will typically also offer a metered option as well. So again, kind of depending on the publisher is what you're going to see in here. The other metered access lending model that you're going to see mainly on HarperCollins and HMH titles is the 26 checkouts model. A lot of libraries like this because you can kind of see, just like those concurrent use options, exactly what it's going to cost per circ, and this won't expire until all those checkouts are used up, unlike the ones that are timed. So no matter how many circulations this gets in that 2-year time frame, it will expire after those 2 years, whereas this isn't going to go anywhere until all the checkouts are used. So those are the most common lending models that you're going to see. Cost per circ is a separate catalog in here. Like Tina said, that'll be covered in October for you guys as well. Simultaneous use is a completely separate catalog as well. These aren't shared by via Advantage Plus either. These are bundles of content, so it's rather than just choosing one title at a time. Most of these you're going to see packages. So, you know, for instance, this Cherry Lake is a pretty popular one in my territory for children's content. You'll see you actually choose 25 titles, and then that's that one price for a unlimited use for a year. So these are organized by format and publisher. Up here is your ebook content, and then down here you're going to find audio books. So Blackstone and Tantor are probably the most popular audiobook packages that you'll see in here. These prices are based on your library size, or excuse me, total annual circulation numbers. So what you see here may be a little bit different depending on your library. The pricing is all dependent on the Advantage account that you're looking at there. So again, sim use can't be shared via Advantage Plus. The main catalog, one copy, one user, and metered access would be shared via Advantage Plus. So couple of different ways to find content or shop for content here in Marketplace. So when you log in, this is going to be your kind of default landing page. We have a full staff of Overdrive digital content librarians. You have one that's dedicated to your account. So Alicia is a new member of my territory team. She used to work at the Akron Public Library System out here in Ohio, so very familiar with digital content, and she'll be happy to help, you know, with content related questions, or even helping with building carts for you as well if you wanted. But her team puts together these lists that you can utilize to shop. So if I look at view all must-haves, this is going to expand and have a lot of the kind of the New York Times bestsellers, different types of you know, library book related websites, you know, USA Today, Book Page, a lot of things that you're going to be probably familiar with, as well as some kind of specialized lists that their team has put together. So like this back to school sale that goes on for another couple of weeks. If I wanted to kind of shop a specific area, they made it pretty easy to find, you know, titles on this specific topic here. As I'm shopping, you'll notice these filters came up when I browse a list. That's going to be the same no matter how you search for content or how you're browsing. So if I wanted to, let's say, you know, I'm looking for Stephen King, for instance, this is what we kind of term the basic search bar. So if I know, you know, exactly what I'm looking for, whether it's an author or a specific title, you know, I can just type real quick in that basic search bar, click on the results or hit the magnifying glass, and then my search results are going to populate here. So a lot of stuff in Marketplace that's by Stephen King here. So you'll see these lists, or excuse me, the filters are still present on the left-hand side. They are kind of what we call sticky. So let's say I wanted to just show only titles that are not owned right now in the collection, and you know, maybe I want to beef up the audiobook collection a little bit more, and not really ready to start buying metered access titles, so I want to stick to those OCOU titles. So if I click apply here, Marketplace is only going to show me those titles that fit the filters that I just applied here. And you notice, like I said, these are sticky, so these are going to stay here regardless if I add additional filters. So, you know, if I wanted to say, you know, only things up until, you know, a certain point in time, I can do that here. If I want to limit by price, you know, I certainly could. So a lot of things that I can do here. And then if I ever wanted to remove a filter, I can always do that as well. So if I wanted to see all ebooks and audiobooks that meet these same criteria, I can easily change those filters there on the left-hand side. So that's just kind of basic searching using that basic search bar, and then the filters on the left-hand side. More often than not, libraries will utilize this advanced search tool, which is another really common way of finding things that you're looking to purchase in here. So let's say, you know, I'm a JV and YA selector only, and I want to limit my results to only those audience levels. You know, I can come in here and, you know, maybe I only want to look at juvenile fiction today. That's what I want to focus on. And, you know, maybe I know that comic and graphic books are pretty popular right now. So I can take a look at that. Lending model, I can limit here. you know, maybe I'm interested in seeing, you know, what I can find in this lending model, this newer one. Probably not going to be much in that subject, actually. Maybe a bad example. I can put a maximum price in here. So let's say I, you know, don't want to spend anything more than $50. If I hit search here, again, you're going to see those same filters come up just like you would anywhere browsing a list in Marketplace. There's going to be a lot of results because I kept those, you know, options pretty broad. So you see Diary of a Wimpy Kid actually has concurrent use for the ebook, which is pretty cool. So you see those filters again come up based on what I placed in the advanced search. So again, can kind of narrow this down even more if I wanted to, based on a number of different things here. All my subjects are going to come up as well. So if I wanted to add additional things here, I could. The other nice thing about the advanced search is, you know, if I know that as a, you know, let's say I'm a YA only selector, if I know that I'm always going to be running the same search in here time and time again, you know, I can actually save a search. So let's say, you know, I'm only looking at a young adult fiction and only want to look at things that have at least one hold for my patrons. I can save this search. So if I click save, it's going to ask me to name that search. I can put a little description, and then this pin search to menu will then in turn give you a nice little link right here under save searches that you can just simply click on, and it'll run that same advanced search for you. So if it's something that you know that you're going to be utilizing quite a bit, that's a nice option to save a search. So that's advanced search. You'll notice when I was shopping in here, Tina had some carts already created. So let's say, you know, I'm shopping right now and I'm looking at, you know, some sports titles, getting into football, basketball, hockey season coming up pretty soon here. So let's say, you know, I want to create a cart of maybe some sporty romance titles, which is something that's really popular with our digital content librarians right now for some reason. So if I, you'll see if I click this arrow here, it's going to give me a couple of different options. The main cart would be October 2023. And then I have the option to add to a new cart as well. So all of these carts that you see here are what we call pinned carts. So if I say, let's add this to a new cart, I then prompted to name my cart. This is always going to default as pin as main cart. So if I do create here, you're going to see my label with the cart name, as well as a total of what's in that cart, both the number of copies and the total cost. So as I'm kind of scrolling now, you know, if I wanted to add things to this cart, because I pinned it as my main cart, I can quickly just kind of add additional titles to that cart. Or if, you know, I'm shopping and let's say, you know, something maybe were to look good for one of my other carts, I still have that option to add it to one of these other carts that's also been pinned. So you notice this button is grayed out for this particular title. Before you can add it to a cart, in cases where there's multiple lending models, you do have to select that lending model first. So let's say, you know, maybe this is one that I don't want to add until maybe, you know, future purchases or maybe November 2023. You'll notice this cart then got updated there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that title out of Tina's cart. So you notice if I click on any of these pinned carts from the shopping screen, it'll take me right into the cart details and I can edit the cart from there as well. So creating a cart's pretty simple. Once I have the cart created, if I want to purchase it, there's a lot of steps that you have to go through to actually complete the purchase. So Overdrive or Marketplace rather is kind of trying to put in some stop gaps, whether or not, you know, to make sure that you've kind of selected everything that you need to, you've updated your lending models, chosen, you know, the appropriate number of copies, all those sorts of things. So this is not going to purchase right away. If I click on this, there's going to be quite a few things that I need to kind of check off, and it'll give me the different payment options that I have here. If I have a saved credit card or bank account in here, that option will be displayed. If I'm the type of library that purchased content credit in advance, that option would show up here as well. So that's creating and pinning carts. Mentioned there's some tools in Marketplace that are designed to make kind of shopping easier for you, especially if you're doing kind of the same types of searches or you know, shopping on a regular basis. You'll find those from the shop menu here under purchasing tools. And there's a few different options right now. This smart list will actually be replaced come November with what's going to be called a metered access manager. But this right now will allow you to help manage repurchasing of metered access content. The most common purchasing tool that gets used is a holds manager. So if I click on this, it's going to allow me to create a new plan. And I can have as many of these as you want, by the way. So if I want to, I can do this in a number of ways. So a lot of people will set this up based on a holds ratio, or a total number of holds is probably the next most common. So it's going to default to holds ratio. I do need to put a value in here. So the holds ratio for a given title is going to be the number of holds divided by the number of copies. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to see 10 or more, or 10 or higher rather, for the ratio. So what this means is Marketplace will only put a title in a holds manager cart for you if it has a ratio of 10 or higher. So I can also do things like exclude suspended holds, which most people do. You can also exclude delivered holds. So those would include those holds that a patron hasn't taken action yet in the 72-hour window. You have a lot of kind of filters as far as price, whether or not you want to own more than one copy of something, or any number of copies. I can limit by lending model. I can limit by format. So like I said, if I wanted to have multiple set up, even by format, audience level, I can do that. So publishers, audience levels, languages, and then the branches down here are going to indicate where the hold originated from. So, you know, if I was, you know, doing this for Tina's library, for instance, I would first exclude all the branches, and then I would only include my branch. And then that way it's only going to look at my patron's holds. So once I kind of determine what parameters I want to set up for the holds manager plan, I have a couple of different options as far as how often you want Marketplace to generate a cart for you based on the parameters. Most people will do this once a month, but what I typically see is the same cadence as you would be making purchases. So if you're somebody that's making purchases every week, then maybe you want this to run every week for you. You get to choose the first time that plan will run, and it'll run subsequently based on the first criteria option that you have here. If you're a library that uses POs, you do have the option to enter an internal PO ID, which would then just show up on the cart that gets created for you. This will give you a cart automatically. It will give you an option to place an order. So just if you are setting this plan up, just be cognizant of the fact that this second option will actually purchase the cart on your behalf. So most people will just simply have it save that cart for you. And then you can have the plan name the cart the same thing every month. For example, if it was running once a month. So that's probably the most commonly used purchasing tool. The patron interest manager is a new option that is more of a report than it is a purchasing tool, but this can create a cart for you as well. So for instance, I'll use this one that Tina's already set up. So notify me tags are a new feature as of last year. They excuse me, allow a patron to tag a title that's not owned by any of their libraries in Libby, and then be notified if any of their libraries purchased said title. So right now, the parameters that Tina has set up here is that Marketplace is only going to display titles that have 2 or more tags, all formats. It's excluding pre-orders, and then it's generating a cart for her every other month. Otherwise, this is just showing a report essentially for these titles. So a couple of these are pre-orders. You can see that it still has a TBD in terms of a price in there. That could be also meaning they have multiple lending models. So if I look at this one, yeah, this one just has the lending model choice. So if I wanted to purchase it, I again have to choose that lending model first. And you'll see it showing me that there's 3 tags on this particular title right now. So that's active tags, meaning none of the tags on the title have been satisfied by other libraries quite yet. So this is intended to be both a report or a cart generator for you. So if I look at the parameters in terms of creating a new plan for this, it looks very, very similar to what we were just looking at for the holds manager. So it's instead giving you of that ratio choice or number of holds, it's giving you the number of active notify me tags. So that means tags that haven't been satisfied yet. The minimum or maximum can be used here as far as the number of tags. That's going to dictate what gets placed into that cart or what shows up in that report for you. You can have as many of these as you want. So again, if you wanted to separate them by format, lending model, publisher, language, audience, you can certainly do that. And then this option at the end will allow you to either create a cart or just simply save it as a report. So if I come back here, Tina already has this one saved. Again, it's just creating a cart for her every other month. But if she wants to just quickly run that report, it's also going to live down here always. So these are the only titles that meet the criteria that's in that current purchasing tool setup. So probably the most common is going to be the holds manager, followed by this one as of late because of the purchase, the new feature notify me, and then smart list will get replaced with that metered access manager. So it's probably not something that I would be setting up right now if I were you guys. The other thing with metered access content is you'll always get these automated metered alert carts. So we'll generate one cart for things that are expiring in less than a month's time, or that have 5 or less checkouts on them. So you'll get 2 different carts based on either it's metered access by time or metered access by checkout. So these are automated carts. Once that metered access manager gets enabled in November is the target right now, these will actually go away and get replaced by the metered access manager plans. So that's the purchasing tools section. So again, I got there from the shop tab and then this purchasing tools option. So right underneath that is purchase content credit. I mentioned that when we were looking at checking out a cart. If you are the type of library that likes to have kind of a deposit on file that you can kind of just draw from over time, you can always purchase content credit in here right from the shop tab. The credit is immediately on your account, so it's not like something that you have to wait for to pay the invoice. The invoice will generate immediately for you. It'll be located on the billing tab. But again, that credit would be ready to be used right away once you make the purchase there. So want to pause real quick before I go on to some of the kind of the basic reports. Any questions on shopping at all? Okay. So all of the reports in Marketplace are housed on this Insights tab. And if you have a Marketplace account and you're not seeing this tab, you can always reach out to me, or a lot of times the admin at your library should have access to adjust your profile with this Marketplace users menu, but I don't ever mind fixing that for you as well. So Insights tab is where all of our reports are. The landing page is going to have just kind of a high level dashboard This is total for the consortium. So even if I'm logged into my Advantage account like I am in Tina's right now, this is still just going to give you a snapshot of the last month worth of data for the whole group as a whole. This holdings section is what I always recommend using come end of year for your state reporting. So a lot of you, will submit numbers at the end of the fiscal year, which I know is December in New Jersey. So if, for instance, I needed to report, the full amount of titles that, are owned in my Advantage account at the end of the year, this would have been the Glenridge Advantage account on 12/31. If I was looking for, the full amount of titles available to my patrons at the end of the fiscal year, I would just check everything, and these totals would have been what's available on that date in the past. Now, if I change this to today's date, it's going to show me the current time frame. So if I wanted to use, like, let's say last fiscal year for an example, you can see this should change the amount of copies and titles that are in the collection as a whole. So that's the holding section broken out by format. This is just the current amount of what's checked out and what's currently on hold right now. It'll give you a snapshot of the current average waiting period as well there. It does kind of show that it doesn't include weeded titles, expired, or any of the databases. So Libby extras that you may have. It does specify that each CPC and SU title counts as one copy, and then Advantage Plus reflects the sum in titles copies shared by other Advantage members within the collection. So since you guys do have Advantage Plus on, this is a total sum of shared Advantage content from other libraries.
Nick, we had a late question about if you
Sure.
could please go over one copy, one user and metered access again.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm shopping in here, the most common lending models that you're going to see are one copy, one user, and metered access. It's the top catalog option and default that you'll get when you log into Marketplace. One copy, one user, you own one copy of this. It can be checked out by one user at a time. Otherwise, there's a wait list on the title, and this is yours in perpetuity. So it never expires from the collection after a number of checkouts or a number of months. The only way that this would be hidden from patron view is if you weed the copy of that title. Whereas metered access is typically essentially a lease period of time. So the most common that you're going to see is 2 years and 1 year. And then HarperCollins and HMH primarily offer 26 checkouts that can be used still by one person at a time. Otherwise, there's a wait list. However, it's the copy wouldn't expire until all 26 checkouts are used. The newest metered access lending model is concurrent use for 100 checkouts. You may see this referred to as Overdrive Max in certain places in Marketplace. These 100 checkouts can be used simultaneously. So 100 people can check out this title at the same time if you have a copy active. This particular lending model is shared via Advantage Plus, as are OCOU and the other metered access lending models. SIM use and cost per circ are not shared via Advantage Plus. And the lending models offered for a particular title are dependent on what the publisher is willing to provide Overdrive with. So went through the landing page of the Insights tab. The other thing that's on this landing page that's new that can be used in a couple of different ways is the patron interest dashboard. So this is intended to be kind of like a high-level overview of what's happening with Notify Me data or curation. So if I filter activity, you'll see this content filter at the top has either listen, campaigns, titles, or Notify Me data. These top options are going to be the most commonly used. So if I was curious about, what my patrons at Glenridge were borrowing as far as the curated lists that you see in Libby. You'll see a number of checkouts and holds placed on the lists, the most popular lists in Libby that were, used by Glen Ridge patrons. And then followed by most popular titles in those lists. And then if we're running any campaigns, so this would be Big Library Read, or if you had like a book club happening, that would show up there. The Notify Me data is also present here at kind of like a high level. So there's an Advantage account filter in here. So this is only showing me tags from Glen Ridge right now. You'll notice this is titles with the most interest. So this is just a carousel of titles. If I wanted to see kind of a more traditional grid-like report, I can click on View Details, and this will actually show me a full list that I can kind of sort in a number of ways of all the things that have been tagged with Notify Me titles by Tina's patrons. So if I go back here, it's going to show me a couple other things here as well. So I'm going to remove, okay, I already removed that filter. This will also show the impact of Notify Me purchases. So circulations on titles that have been tagged. So you can kind of see in the last couple months the impact, how many of those titles that were tagged with Notify Me are getting checked out, and then how many are placed on hold. So there's been kind of a flip-flop at the end of August, looks like, where there's been more holds than checkouts on things that have been tagged, but for a while there was pretty close. This is added versus satisfied. So how many tags are actually being added by patrons versus how many are getting purchased or satisfied. The other thing to keep in mind is other libraries can satisfy these tags as well, because when a patron tags something with a Notify Me title, if they have multiple library cards in Libby, it'll notify all those libraries. This will also show just kind of an average in terms of the number of tags being added by patrons. So there's majority of people are using this, just 1 or 2 tags at a time, and then as the amount of tags go up, the amount of patrons that actually have that many go down. So a little bit, around 100 or so are really taking advantage of that tag feature, and then a little bit less in September thus far. So this is just a high level overview of Notify Me data. The patron interest purchasing tool that I showed earlier is really the intended place to get more robust data, because you'll see if I look at the results here, I'm seeing more data in terms of street date, the price, the lending model, whether or not it's weeded, first Notify Me tag. So there's a lot more fields present in the patron interest manager than on the insights dashboard here. So that's just the patron interest dashboard. So you can see, again, Notify Me data and curation data there. And then our reports are all on the left-hand side, broken out in categories here. I can also start typing in here. It'll bring up a drop-down list of all the reports. So as you can imagine, checkouts is the most popular report that you can run in Marketplace. There's a lot of different filter options in here. So if I'm looking at ebook versus audiobook checkouts, these would be the parameters that I would use for last month's checkouts alone. So you can see there's branch filters in here. If I were to X this out, it's going to show me data for all branches within Buckles. This Advantage filters, you can see all checkouts on Advantage owned titles or only by Advantage users on your Advantage owned titles. The thing to keep in mind with this is that Marketplace looks at everything at a title level and not a copy level. So even if you click this radio button and you're showing only your patrons checkouts on your Advantage owned titles, you could still be seeing checkouts that occurred on other libraries' copies. It's just that you also own that title in your Advantage account. So that's why I always kind of recommend using this top option. It's going to show you the full picture And then if you wanted to narrow it down a little bit in terms of who actually purchased the copy that you're looking at, you can use Excel to narrow that down a little bit. And that's something that I actually go through in a different training that I'm guessing is probably recorded somewhere. So for this example, I'm going to leave that branch open. The top filter is going to denote how the data is presented to me. So if I look at the different options I have here, there's only so many. So, you know, if I were looking at multiple years worth of data, you know, if I wanted to say, well, let me see 3 years worth of checkouts and I want to see them year by year, I can run it this way and you'll see the resulting data is broken up by years. So 2020, 21, 22, 23. These are all hyperlinked. So if I were to click in this top one for 2022 last year, it's going to show me the full data set of all 1.3 million plus checkouts from 2022. And they're all going to be individual checkouts. So if there's lots of checkouts on one title, they're all going to show up individually. So that's year. The format, as you can imagine, if let's say I want to just look at August, what is the split of audiobook versus ebook checkouts? This is going to break it down into specific formats. So if I wanted to get whole numbers for ebooks and audiobooks, you can actually combine these. So if I want to say, well, let me just do all ebooks, or excuse me, all audiobooks first, this will show me the 3 different audiobook formats. It'll also give me that total there versus ebooks. If I want to deselect something from a list, I just click on it again, and then you'll see this all comes back up. So if I want to check ebooks next, we can run it again, and you'll see about 71,000 checkouts total for ebooks versus audiobooks. So a lot of different options here. You know, if I want to say month over month for an entire calendar year, for instance, I can get pretty specific with how I run the report and how the data looks when it's presented to me. So this will give me a full 12 months worth of data. And then you're always going to have an option to create a worksheet here. The numbers that appear on your Excel worksheet will be the exact same, or the data rather, will be the exact same as what's displayed in the grid here. So, you know, if I wanted to see full checkout data for something, I would need to drill into one of those hyperlinks and then export using the create worksheet button. So once I do that, it's going to automatically download an Excel file for me that I can then kind of take a look at, add additional filters to if I want. So a lot of different filters here. You can browse by subject, audience level. So if I'm a specific selector, again, you know, I want to see just juvenile for the year and I still want it in that month to month breakdown, it's still going to give me that data here just based on those additional filters that I get. And all these are still going to be hyperlinked if I wanted to actually see the full data set there. So a lot of options in terms of how this data is shown to you, how much data you're looking at. Pretty easy to total things up, like I said, with the different kind of options that you have in that top filter. The next most popular report that you're going to probably be looking at pretty often is current holds. So I can use this jump to a different report option and just go right to the current holds report. If I'm in my Advantage account, this is always going to default to my branch, which will only show me my patrons holds. Tina's got a couple of different filters in here. So she's only looking at active holds, so nothing that's been suspended, and then nothing that's not available for sale that she can't even purchase any longer. So if I click update here, it's going to show me the numbers for just my patrons. This current average waiting period will never change. It's always, excuse me, this will change, but it's never going to it's always going to be the same for every Advantage account. So this is showing the full consortium waiting period. We don't have the capability to break that down by individual branch right now. So I'm seeing a total for amount of patrons on hold by format. And then it's actually going to show me all of the titles that are on hold with the information in terms of amount of holds, when the first hold was placed, if there's ownership of these titles, whether or not that's in the shared collection or Advantage. So anytime you see the abbreviation CONS, that refers to consortium, or it's really referring to the shared collection of titles that you have for Buckles. This will also show Advantage plus shared titles. So you can see this particular title is Atomic Habits. Tina actually has one copy shared from her library system out of this 30. So there's 30 total shared copies that her patrons have access to, and one is actually one of her own Advantage copies. So a lot of information here. If you see pink in grid reporting for marketplace titles, that indicates a pre-order. So if I clicked on this title, it's going to show me a pre-order with an estimated street date. And then I still have those options for the different metered access lending models there. So I can export this again. If I click create worksheet right now, it will export all of the data here. So, you know, a lot of people will utilize this report if they're shopping, if they're really kind of looking at, you know, what do my Glen Ridge patrons have on hold, and, you know, how can I kind of impact that number. So if I wanted to see the amount of holds that my patrons have on these titles, I can sort by the amount of holds or an Advantage ratio if I wanted to. You'll notice these numbers are both the same right now. That's because I have a branch filter on. So if I wanted to see all holds, but also just my Advantage holds, I can run this for all branches, and then this is going to then show me the total amount of holds versus my patrons holds. So this title is the most popular at Tina's library. However, this Happy Place is the most popular at the consortium. So consortium ratio versus Advantage ratio are two numbers that you're probably going to take into consideration as you're shopping this report. Consortium ratio is an indicator of how many total copies are in the collection overall versus the total amount of holds, whereas Advantage ratio is just looking at the amount of holds that your patrons have on that particular title. So most of these are pretty low in terms of the amount of, or the ratio that Tina has at her library. But if I wanted to find, you know, the largest ratio, I can sort that way as well. So not a ton that has a pretty high ratio at her library. So, you know, if I wanted to do some shopping here, maybe I'm instead looking at, you know, what's going to make the biggest impact to the consortium holds or holds ratio rather. So if I sort it this way, you know, maybe you know, one of these titles is something that I want to add to my Advantage account and have you know, it's shared when that releases. So a lot you can do from the current holds report in terms of looking at, you know, what's already owned, how many holds are there, what the ratio is, price, last active hold, things like that. And again, pink indicates pre-orders. So a lot of this stuff is just yet to come out yet. So so that's current hold report. Went over the dashboard on patron interests. The other tool that Tina mentioned at the start that we introduced for Advantage libraries last year, I believe, is Advantage weeding. So these parameters were set up by default for all Advantage libraries, but they have an extra parameter on. So if you haven't set up an advantage weeding plan, you should already have an automatic plan set up, but it will say weed only expired titles that are shared through Advantage Plus and that are that have 0 holds. So we recommend setting the plan up with the parameters that Tina has here, and that's because the plan will then weed all of your expired metered access copies from your Advantage account. However, it will only weed copies of titles that have no holds. It will leave things expired so your patrons can still see them that have holds already. So a lot of people kind of utilize the number of holds something has as to, whether or not they want to repurchase it again. So again, like I said, this kind of purchasing tools here, the smart list will be replaced with metered access manager. One of those things, that you'll be able to kind of base that plan on will be number of holds, number of checkouts that the particular title got, so things of that nature. So we do recommend that if you haven't yet, to switch your plan to these criteria. You'll notice if you're shopping from time to time, you may come across a title that's been weeded from your Advantage collection. So, if I look at this particular title, as I'm shopping, I'm gonna get a message here that says this title is weeded in your Advantage collection. If I want to repurchase this title rather, I would have to first unweed the title. Marketplace is giving me that option right from the shopping screen now. This will unweed your Advantage copy and then allow you to add it to a new cart. When you weed from your Advantage account, you're only weeding your copies in your Advantage account. It will not affect anyone else's copies in their Advantage account, nor would it affect any copies in the shared collection. So it's really just about ensuring that what your patrons are seeing in Libby or the Overdrive website is up to date and actually accessible to them to borrow. So if a metered access title is in the collection and has no more time on it, or if all the checkouts are expired, the title itself will still show up in terms of that title record for the patron. It's just that their only option would be to place a hold on it. So if there's no holds on something and it's expired, if it's not something that you anticipate repurchasing, this just kind of allows you to weed those automatically, so you don't have to worry about doing it manually. So any questions on weeding titles? Primarily going to be expired metered access that you weed here, or occasionally titles that are no longer for sale that could be expired and you can't purchase any longer, things like that. Nina, did you want me to go through just a high-level overview of Advantage curation, or was that something that we were doing on the more advanced training?
I believe we were doing that in the more advanced training.
Okay.
But if you just want to tell people what curation is.
Yeah, absolutely. So curation is a tool that we have in Marketplace that you have access to from your Advantage account. You can kind of dictate what is shown to just your patrons. It just requires a little bit of upkeep and a manual process to refresh what's shown to ensure that you're having some automated lists populate, because right now Overdrive does help curate the content that your patrons are seeing. So you can see kind of Overdrive curated lists here. These are all published. And then Tina also has some drafts down here. So these are all the lists that are visible right now to patrons. And if I'm an Advantage library and I want to, adjust the lists that my patrons are seeing, I can come to this organized published list section and actually activate Advantage curation. So right now, Tina has this off. If I wanted to, I can click yes. It's going to give you some disclaimers here. So what I typically do, and we do have several libraries that use advanced curation right now and within Buckles. What I typically will recommend is that you reach out to me if you want to get started with this, and I'll set up a call with myself and Alicia, your content librarian here, so we can kind of go through the process. It is a little bit involved. There's multiple different ways to curate lists, whether they're automated or a truly curated list. So that's something that you would actually be picking title by title. But the biggest thing that happens when you change to advanced curation is that you do not receive new lists created by the consortium. And those are those lists that I mentioned that Alicia is creating and publishing to the site. There is a trick to kind of refresh these periodically, but that's why, you know, we kind of just recommend that we get together individually and go through the process with you to make sure that you understand how it works and are still getting access to all these great lists that everybody else does, basically. So,
do you want to show everybody where they can find the information to get in touch with you and with?
yes, absolutely. On the support tab, you'll find my information with my extension email address here. Alicia is the person I was just mentioning, so she's your digital content librarian. You can go right to her if you have like questions on specific content or need carts created. Bart is your product sports specialist. He's a little bit more on the technical side of things. So if you have mark record questions, problems with authentication, or questions with authentication setups, you can ask him. We do have several ticket types down here under contact us. So if you have general questions, patron issues that you can't really solve just on, you know, based on basic troubleshooting or the help sites, you can enter a support ticket here. Libby also has direct patron support. So that's always kind of my first recommendation is if you're unable to troubleshoot with a patron in Libby, they can always enter that ticket directly themselves and communicate directly with support. But you can always enter one on their behalf as well using this button. Invoicing support is if you have questions on invoices, you need a statement. If you need content credit applied to an invoice, our accountants would take care of that for you using this ticket type. Authentication is just what it sounds like. So if you have, you know, a library card rule update, so if maybe you have a new barcode prefix you want to add to your authentication setup, maybe you're switching ILS vendors, maybe you're doing a server upgrade, anything that could potentially throw out of whack the overall kind of signing in and signing out of Libby for your patrons. Just recommend that you get a ticket in ahead of time or after an issue arises, and then that team can help to remedy a situation or prepare for an upcoming change. So all of the help resources are on the support tab as well. Some of these are a little bit more advanced. I think the biggest thing that you may want to do from time to time is merge a user barcode. So if you have somebody that you're giving a new library card to, you can enter the old barcode here, new barcode there, click merge, and then merge the activity from one card to another. So they'll still have access to the same checkout history, holds, all those types of things. So you may run into the need to use that from time to time as well.
I believe that Buckles does that for us, possibly.
Oh, cool. Okay.
As part of our of their support
Nice
system. Yes, it's quite exciting.
Any questions
That was
on?
Always the people mad that they couldn't get their holds anymore.
I will say, if you're ever doing this yourself, just make sure you're putting these in the right place, because once they get merged, we can't unmerge them or merge the same card again. So definitely had that happen from time to time. Any questions on reporting or shopping or anything that I went over? My timing is impeccable. 1 minute.
Go, Nick. It doesn't look like any questions, but I do believe that Darlene had a couple of announcements for us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Darlene Swistock from the Buckles office, and I would like, first, let me just mention, piggyback on what Tina just said about merging users. So there is a support form that can be filled out within Buckles when you're moving patrons from one library to another, and also it affects their e-content lending. So just fill out a support ticket and Buckles will help you with that. So I would like to thank Nick from Overdrive for a great informative class. I would like to thank Tina Marie Duty, our director at Glenridge, for helping to arrange this training. This class will be offered again on October 3rd. So if you have any colleagues that you think would benefit, or if you want to attend it again, please feel free to sign up. As Tina mentioned previously, she will be presenting cost per circ training on October 3rd and October 13th. I did send an email about that. I will send another email. So if you'd like to sign up, do that via Eventbrite, please. We will be sending certificates for attendance to everyone who came today. I'll also be sending an evaluation form about today's class. If you could please respond and give us your feedback, it helps us to determine future training as well as training for this topic and other topics. So again, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to attend, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nick, and thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Have a good afternoon.